Hey there and welcome to another episode of the More Cashflow podcast. My name is Thomas. I am the owner and founder of a couple companies in Portugal. In fact, I am a Portuguese entrepreneur and that's why my accent is so terrible. And today we are going to discuss what is going on. Why are we seeing everyone talking about a recession? So, is there going to be a recession in 2023? Will there not be a recession in 2023? Does anybody actually know whether or not that will happen? Well, the answer is obviously not. And if there was somebody smart enough to actually know exactly what's going to happen, that person would probably already be the richest person in the world. And Elon says he does not know whether or not we will head into a recession. So if the smartest, if the wealthiest guy in the world does not know, I'm pretty certain the other people claiming to know do not know. I'm also trying a new tripod today, which is looking kind of funny, at least in the images I'm recording. So please bear with me, and I apologize if this looks weird. But I promise, we're gonna actually get into some data and some facts and actual good ways, intelligent ways of thinking about this, and not just a random rant by yours truly, Thomas. So let's see, what motives do we have to believe there will be a recession? And by the way, just before we start, let me just give you my 2 cents on it. And everybody's got an opinion, so I'll just give you mine straight away, and then we'll dive into the actual facts and we'll have actual people that accomplish much more than me and anybody and we know actually did. But let's just get my opinion out for a second. So I am actually in the middle. So I do not believe we'll have a big recession. I do not either believe we'll have some kind of soft landing, at least in Europe, and probably not in the US as well. So what I believe what's going to happen is that we're going to have a slowdown. It's going to be a slight dip. Maybe you could call it a recession, but it's going to be more of a bump in the road, just a tougher bump, but it's going to be a bump for sure, but it's not going to be something catastrophic. And that's my opinion, and we'll go on. Now, why do I say this? Well, I'm going to give you a couple opinions. So first off, who thinks we're going to have a recession? Well, one of the people that believes we're going to head into a recession is Stanley Druckenmiller. Now, you may not know who Stanley Druckenmiller is. This is one of the most accomplished investors in the world. It's a guy that's worth roughly $10 billion, I believe. The last time I heard about this figure, I believe it was something around that. And so this is a guy that has spent his entire life investing and looking at the markets and understanding markets. And he says he's pretty confident, he's almost sure that we're going to have a recession in 2023. Now, on the opposite hand, we also have Sam Zell. Sam Zell is possibly the most successful real estate REIT developer in the world, which, by the way, if you do not know what a REIT is a real estate investment trust. So it's basically a conglomeration of buildings that someone puts together and then sells as one single paper unit in the liquidity market. Or I don't know, in other words, you basically make it a stock. So you buy several buildings, you put them together, you wrap them up with a nice sheet to give them to the people in the public markets, and then people just buy the shares just like they're buying a stock, just like they're buying everything else on the liquid markets, like a bond, like whatever. And so Sam Zell actually believes the opposite. Sam Zell has been quoted, and by the way, Sam Zell did not say it like he cares what I say, but Sam Zell was not he did not say what he thought about recession. He did say, however, what he thought about what the policies of the central banks would be. And by the way, it's funny to see how everybody suddenly became an interest rate specialist and a policy specialist. And by the way, I'm not like the goal of this video is not just to give you some facts about what could happen or not. It's to really give you some quality advice about how to take it either way. And I'll explain my philosophy later. And as you see, I'm pretty much in the middle right here. I don't really care. Like, if things go south, I'm gonna be benefited. If things keep good, I'm gonna be benefited. So whichever way it goes, I'll keep making money, and that's how you should play the game too. But let's first touch on this point about Sam Zell. So Sam Zell is a guy that's been around the block for a long time. He saw the war. He actually fled Germany, if I'm not mistaken, when he was a kid because he was Jew. And so this is someone that recognizes how tough the world can get, and he believes the government right now would not allow people to see how tough the world can get, and so they'll just keep printing money per se. In other words, just doing quantitative easing and increasing the money supply, which will not cause a recession. Instead, it's gonna just keep making inflation increase and diminishing the purchase power of people, which will eventually cause a recession by itself, but that would take a long time if I understand things correctly. So it's not something that would cause, or maybe not. So that's his take, and I actually tend to see a lot of sense in those worlds. So let's see some other people. So what does Warren Buffett, the legendary investor, the man, the legend, the only person that actually matters in the investing world, what does actually Uncle Warren say? So Uncle Warren, he did not speak about it, at least I did not see him speaking about it, but his actions say a lot and say some interesting stuff, which actually helped me a lot make my own conclusion about this, which is that Warren is buying a lot of oil stocks. And oil stocks have been performing wonderfully. I know that because I'm actually heavily invested in oil stocks as well. And hopefully the Greenpeace guys did not get offended at this. But if they did, well, I apologize. I don't really care. Oil does more good for humanity than bad. So screw you. But point being, so Warren is investing in a commodity like oil, which means that he believes inflation will probably go higher. Because if we have a deflation period, oil will not keep going. I mean, it will keep going up. Oil will continuously keep going up because the supply is decreasing, but not at an interesting enough rate for him to take a large position. His current fourth largest position, if I'm not mistaken. So that makes you think, Uncle Warren maybe believes we're not gonna be heading into the gigantic recession. Instead, he believes we're gonna be heading into a gigantic inflation pit. Although, and this is the interesting part, Uncle Warren is also holding a lot of cash, not a record amount, he's had more cash on hand, but Berkshire is still holding, I believe, hundreds of billions, which is a lot by any standard, but to say, so he does not fully believe, this is just me judging the situation, but somebody's gotta do it, so this leads you to conclude that although he's not fully confident that inflation will keep on going on, it's a big indication that he believes that's the likeliest scenario, but it's not guaranteed, and so he's holding a lot of cash so that he can buy big opportunities whatever which way the market goes, which is the right way to play the game, because you never know which way things will go, and unless you're absolutely positive, unless you're 99.9% positive, which we rarely are, and not just, I'm not talking about convincing yourself to be positive about stuff, I'm actually talking about facts that lead you to conclude with a very, very high level of certainty that certain things will happen. I mean, if that is the case, if you're absolutely confident something will happen, then you should take a major position. Which is ironic me saying this, because that's actually what I did with oil. I fully believe in oil. I'm pretty much 99.9% confident that oil will keep going up over the next few years and next few decades, because it's finite, and if there's one thing we know about things that are finite is that they usually beat inflation and at least hold their value. And what we know about valuable things that keep disappearing is that they keep getting more and more valuable. So oil is pretty valuable. I am a big believer in oil, and so if you got a thesis that really supports your claim, you should definitely do a big investment on that. That's also why Bitcoin people really disappeared and never really, most of them did not make any money out of it, because even though they were fully Bitcoin and it's gonna go up and blah blah blah, nobody sold their house to buy Bitcoin. I mean, I should take this back. A lot, probably more people than it should have happened sold their houses to buy Bitcoin. But if everyone that talked about Bitcoin was that convinced that Bitcoin was the greatest thing, the greatest investment since sliced bread, then they would have sold their homes and bought Bitcoin. They did not. So that proves my point, which is that what people say and what people do are two pretty different things, and that shows their level of confidence on whatever investment they were talking, which in this case did not turn out too well. And I will keep on that stance even if things change on the short term, because the moment interest rates become interesting enough for pretty much everybody to drop their magical internet investments and go put their money on bonds and savings accounts and stuff, that will be the moment where things that do not produce cash flow disappear. And that's actually the reason why this is called the More Cashflow podcast, because the only thing that matters in life is cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. What does oil produce? Oil extraction produces cash flow. A lot of cash flow, not just hopes and dreams and EBITDA. No, it's cash flow, which is really nice. But I'm losing my point here. As you can see, this is a Friday night, and I'm here recording random videos at 2 a.m. as usual. So it's actually not 2 a.m. This time is actually midnight, so we're getting better. And so you gotta put up with my random rants. But you probably think by now that out of every 5 minutes that I don't say anything useful, there's about 30 seconds that I actually drop a useful fact. So let's keep that ratio. And the next person I'd like to mention is Chamath Palihapitiya, which has become quite famous in YouTube recently. Much more famous than I will probably ever, I don't like to say ever, but I'll probably be during the next decade or 2 or 3. So let's see what Chamath says. Chamath pretty much believes that in terms of investing in the liquid markets, we've already hit the bottom or are very close to hitting a bottom, because usually the rates precede the bottom of the liquid markets, but they do not precede them in a very large length of time. So if the rate hikes are closing in what seems to be the end of the rate hikes, then also the bottoming of the markets should be close. That's pretty much the thesis I took from it. Now this leads us to also conclude that we have to assume rate hikes are close to the end, and that's an interesting thought experiment, because are they? And at least by living in Europe for over 20 years now, I can tell you that I'm actually pretty confident we are close to the end of the rate hikes, at least in Europe. I hope the US does not do the same mistakes Europeans keep doing, but Europeans are known to European politicians are known to not give a fuck about any logic or reasoning or actually saving the economy, but to get more votes on the next election is really all they care about. So they don't really give a damn as long as they can give you a handout so that you can go through the next meal, and then screw you, it's our problem. I'm not sure we're actually gonna see many more rate hikes in Europe, and that's also the reason I do not recommend anybody that I know to invest heavily in Europe, which is also something that I'm not too happy about, because my companies obviously are very exposed to Europe, not as much as they used to be, because now I'm pretty much my businesses are pretty much online. But when I had a brick and mortar location, which is something I will not get into in this video, because it's going to take a lot of time to explain all that stuff. I was not happy about the fact that I'm fully reliant on how Portugal is doing, and so I recommend my European friends, just at least in terms of your personal investments, try to get them as far away as possible from Portugal. That said, and from Europe pretty much. So with that said, so what would happen if rate hikes stop? Well, one should assume that inflation would continue and would likely stay at the same levels or worsen, which hopefully would not worsen, because that would be really, really catastrophic. And so savers will really become losers, and broke people will just be going off on their days, just like they always have done, and will just keep blaming rich people for their problems, and that's gonna solve it. And rich people will also not give a damn, because rich people usually own assets, and assets also keep up with inflation, and so the only people that get screwed, as usual, is the middle class. And so the middle class is gonna get squeezed and squeezed and squeezed because of these retarded policies that Europe keeps making, and Europe also keeps sending cash away from Europe to other places. We've just seen here in Portugal a new tax. So the Portuguese decided to do a special tax for or the only oil company in Portugal, and then after they did that, they decided it's actually a pretty good idea. It's actually pretty cool. So now they're doing a special tax to tax surprising profits from the supermarket. So pretty much anyone that has more profits this year than they had the prior year is gonna get not only taxed on their profit, it's gonna get super taxed on their profit, because you are a bad communist. You gotta be a communist to be here. But I'm deviating from the point. So what does this lead us to conclude? Well, my honest reading and opinion out of this is really the same conclusion and opinion that Ken Griffin, who is the founder of Citadel Securities, one of the largest investment companies in the world, as I believe. Just to be clear, I'm not an investing guy. Like, I've actually done pretty well in terms of investing for myself, but I'm not in any way, shape, or form an investment specialist, whatever that means, because most of them actually have more or less money than the people I know and me, which is kind of funny, since most of my friends are not investment specialists, and that's just besides the point. So my point here, and by the way, there are some good. I'm saying this like I actually know and work with some actual money managers that are very professional. I actually know what they're talking about, but most people are just spitting an opinion some larger company gave them without actually going through the counter arguments and the arguments for what their position is, which is actually what I'm trying to do in this very confusing and very weird video. But I'm actually trying to give you different points of view so that you can process it in your head and come to your own conclusions about what we are going to face. But Ken Griffin says something that I really agree with, which is that you should not try to predict what's going to happen and act accordingly to one prediction. Instead, you should see what's more likely to happen and act according based on the information you have to the various scenarios. And so if you believe inflation is a possibility but it's not the most likely scenario, then you should have some assets that are hedging and they are strong during high inflation times. And if you believe a recession is the most likely outcome, then you should at the same time hold the assets that are liquid as possible. And just to clarify this, so let's say, for example, let's say this is your actual case. So you believe mostly that a recession is going to happen, but you also are worried that inflation might continue and that we, instead of having a recession, we might have central banks just pumping the economy. But that's not your central thesis. So what kind of investment should you do? Well, based on this, what kind of investment should you do? So now you need an investment that's hedged against inflation. So it's something that doesn't really go. It's not really possible to print more of it and multiply it. And at the same time, you want something liquid that has purchasing power. Because if you try, for example, buying stocks and buying houses, the issue is that those things are not really liquid, and if there's a recession, the value of those will go down. So what do you buy? I'll give you an example. For example, Swiss francs. So Swiss francs have a very low inflation historically and currently. So if you buy Swiss francs, you are likely to not experience a real significant inflation rate. And at the same time, because Swiss francs are heavily tied to both gold and stocks, but obviously it's a currency, and I'm not like, no one knows what currency markets will do, so do not try to take currency lessons from this video. But I'm just giving you the point that if you believe a certain thesis will happen, then you should hedge accordingly to multiple scenarios. And so if you have Swiss francs, you have both the purchasing power of actual money and the inflation hedge against inflation. And so that's a pretty decent thing to buy in this period. If you believe that we are actually much more likely to experience hyperinflation, then you should buy something that's limited and scarce, and it's going to be probably much more valuable in the future, both because it's getting more scarce and because inflation will drive up its costs. And so in this case, you should buy a truckload of oil, because oil is also reasonably liquid. I'm not going to say it's super liquid, but it's definitely much more liquid. It's literally liquid when you think about it, and it's much more liquid than real estate. It's more liquid than real estate. But what I mean is its value. It does not decrease proportionally when a recession or a very big downturn happens, as do, for example, stocks or real estate, because it's really an asset, it's really a commodity. And so commodities usually are a bit more stable in that regard. They don't really go miraculously up unless there's a lot of inflation, which means that not really going up, it's just that the power of money is going up. But at the same time, you are getting both the benefits of liquidity, although not that much, and you got not as much as you were holding actual currency, and at the same time you'll be hedging heavily, very heavily against inflation. At this point, it's not actually hedging; it's really betting on inflation, really. And so that's my point to you. So if you think we're gonna head into a recession, if you don't think we're gonna head into a recession, if you believe that no one or nothing or nobody can actually predict what's gonna happen, my suggestion to you is really just put your chessboard in a way that's really hard for anybody to wipe you out whatever scenario happens. That's what really intelligent people do. You do not need to have 100 different stocks in 30 different markets to do this. You just need a couple bets, 3 or 4 invest. I hate the word bets. I should not have said bets. You just need a couple positions, maybe 2 or 3 positions, and you can very, very easily hedge yourself against whatever possibilities happen. And if you keep it simple, you can also be very agile with it. But why am I saying all this? Well, because actually, if you have, and this is my central thesis, is that you should not be investing if you have less than $100,000. Because if you are still spending time trying to understand all these interest rates and what's going to happen if X does Y and A, B, C, D, I mean, you're just wasting time. Because if you do not have at least 100,000 euros or dollars in savings, then you really are not going to benefit in a large way from whatever recession or downturn or whatever not downturn happens, because you do not hold enough assets to actually build meaningful enough positions to really change your life. I mean, if you believe that by earning 10,000 or 20,000 euros or dollars in returns with whatever investments you do during a downturn will change your life, I'm sorry to tell you, but it will not. If you get free $100,000 out of the sky and they land on your wallet, you may believe that's going to change your life, but it's only going to change your life for a very limited span of time. If you really want to make it, you cannot be trying to make quick investments that are going to change your life. And by the way, I'm saying this to people obviously that have under $100,000 in liquid assets, because if you're watching this and you have $30 million, then yes, if you do good investments, then that's probably going to be a meaningful return and a meaningful position to you. But if you do not hold those kinds of assets, what you should be focusing, because it's so easy to make a significant amount of money if you don't have money, but you have the time and the will and the skills. So you should not be wasting time trying to invest. You should be trying to add value to society. That's actually a point I wrote here, which is that you should, if you do not have if you do not have 6 figures in net liquid assets, you should really be caring about creating value and getting paid for it, and not investing. Because investing is really tough and it's really unproductive. Like in investing, you gotta wait a long time, and maybe if you're right, you might make a little bit of money on top of your money. When it comes to actually doing the work, and this is the issue, like people don't usually want to do the work, and so they try to find a quick way to make a lot of money without getting their hands dirty. And I'm sorry to tell you, but everybody that's making it in life has really gotten their hands dirty. And I'm saying this like I'm not a mega successful entrepreneur, but I am definitely on the top 1% incomes in Portugal, as are very many of my friends. And my English, as you can see, is beautiful. I'm an amazing Portuguese Englishman. And so we did not make our money investing. None of my friends, none of my millionaire friends did earn their money investing. Neither did I. I actually do not know anyone that became a decamillionaire, hectamillionaire, doing just investments. There are people like that. They are very few and far between, and honestly, I don't think that's very fun. A very fun way of life. By the way, I talked about decamillionaires and hectamillionaires. If you're curious, I am not a decamillionaire or an hectamillionaire. If you wanna put round things up to the upper side, you could say I'm a millionaire in paper. Although I do not believe in paper money, I really believe in net cash. So in terms of net cash, I am very close to that. But I do not hold actual assets in a liquid form that would put me in that category. And I would say most people that consider themselves millionaires are actually in the same boat as me. So I would say most millionaires are really paper opinion millionaires, not really quite as wealthy as they consider themselves. But this is beside the point. My point being, it's whether we're in a good market, a bad market, a terrible market, a wonderful market, you should always be striving to build value and to deliver value. And if you think if you think for a second that a recession is a bad time to start a business, then my friends, think again. A lot of people believe we're already in a recession, and if you define a recession by 2 negative quarters of GDP growth, actually, if you look at Europe, because Europe always does their little magical thing with the numbers, and the numbers always look positive. But if you actually get a chart with the GDP of most European countries over the last 10 years, you're going to see that since 2008, last 15 years in this case, you're going to see that since 2008 to now, there has been no growth. There has been no growth. There's been actual negative growth. So you could say we've been, in Europe at least, in a recession for 15 fucking years. And so if you think that a recession is a bad time to start a company, then you must be out of your mind, because most of the largest companies in the world were actually made during recessions. And I'm not saying necessarily got started, although many companies actually got started during recession periods. But if you really want to take a big portion of the market to yourself, into your company, and this does not only apply to companies, but really to employees and business owners and people that are working jobs, small jobs, normal jobs, as well. If you think that's a bad time to get started, to really put in the work, you must be crazy, because that's actually the best time possible to put in the work and to build something big. Because if you're running a company, your competitors are now having a hard time keeping their customers and retaining their relationships. That's the perfect time for you to scoop them up if you're prepared in terms of cash and in terms of courage to do so. It's the same with a job. If you think you're going to be let go, I'm actually going to tell you that if you get let go, it's because you were not fundamental to that business. And unless the business goes under, which might be a blessing in disguise, unless the business goes under, if you do not get fired because you are a good performer, you will not only stay with the company, but you will become one of the few that stayed with the company. And you're going to progress much more than anyone that would have joined the company and not have gone through a period of tough times, because you have now both developed an actual emotional bond with the company, and because you were actually there when you were needed. And so the best way to really build things, valuable things, get market share, get recognition, get really a spirit of camaraderie and family, is during tough times. And that doesn't necessarily need to be during an economical downturn, because those are few and far between. But really, when there's a battle, whatever way it is, which is an economical battle, whether it is fight against you, one large competitor, or even just getting the promotion instead of the guy next to you. I mean, those things get really you ahead of whatever's happening in your life. And I'm just ranting and rambling right now, but what I'm trying to say, it is very weird Portuguese fashion, is that if you do not go through tough times, then you will not get tougher. I mean, tough times make tough people, and if you do not get tougher, you will not have the interior fortitude to go through hardships and to know what to do when hardships arrive. And so this to say, recessions, downturns, tough times are really a blessing in disguise more times than not. And I can say this, by the way, I'm saying this as someone that was severely affected by downturns. I'm just going to give you a quick story about the COVID pandemic, the COVID fake habit. So when the COVID started, my main business actually works with medical businesses, physical brick and mortar businesses. And so I really went through a shitty time because we were mostly in Portugal. And by the way, that's another good thing that came from the pandemic and from the COVID, which is that when the Portuguese government decided to shut down most medical facilities in Portugal temporarily, except the ones that were absolutely vital to actual survival of people, I went through a really shitty time, because over 80% of our revenue was tied to those clients. And so suddenly I got to my office one day and 80% of our revenue was missing. And if you run a company and something similar has happened to you, you know how absolutely fucking terrible. I can't even put it in words. Like, it's not terrible. It's beyond terrible. Terrible. Like a 25% drop in revenue is terrible. 80% is just stupid. Like, it doesn't even make sense. And obviously it was temporary, but it was still the shittiest thing that could have happened. And I remember just sitting here and thinking, like, if this stupid policy making decisions and this stupid COVID and all this stupid stuff had happened, I would have been making so much money right now and everything would be so good right now. Blah, 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 blah. And I was really mad about it because it was, I'm not the unfair guy. I don't believe life can be unfair because life is unfair for everybody, so it makes it fair. And I don't think, like, I really hate victimhood and people saying they're victims and you don't understand and everything stuff. Like, everything is tough. Like, just pick your poison. Life is tough. Like, life is tough, and once you understand that, it stops being tough. So you better understand that fast. But this to say, when that happened, I really resented the whole luck of my timing and stuff, and I was mad about it. But then, as I came to think back about those times, actually, that's what propelled my company to start operating in other countries. So when I was at that time operating, I was pretty much just working in Portugal, and right now we export to I don't want to say export sounds weird, but we have relationships in both Portugal. Those are actually the countries you work in, so it's Portugal, the UK and the US, and that would not have happened, and I would not have had both the courage and the will to do that if I hadn't been really put up against the wall and understood that I was not smart for having my company tied up to one single place. Like, that's one blessing that came from the pandemic. Another one is that everybody learned how to use Zoom, and I'm in an industry that's traditionally very used to not using a lot of technology. And so when the pandemic came, everybody became really accustomed to doing video chats and video calls and stuff, and that was an absolute blessing because everybody was stuck at home, and that was the way they communicated. And so that allowed me to start acquiring customers overseas and internationally through Zoom calls and stuff. And that's something I'm a really the kind of guy, like I'm a very traditional guy. I get on the plane, I fly, I open doors, I bring my PowerPoint slides on a printed sheet and stuff. Like, I am a very traditional guy when it comes to sales, but the pandemic really forced me to become more technological, and that was also a blessing in disguise, which allows us to have better margins in the company because we were not spending man hours and money doing business trips and stuff. We were cutting that, and that was nice. It also helped me see which people I could count on my organization and which people were just absolute, I'm forgetting the name of the leeches, yeah, that's the name. And in those times when things get tough, you actually see who's really contributing for the mission and who needs to get their throat cut off. And those times actually help you build a more efficient and amazing and extraordinary organization. Tough times are wonderful for people that are prepared. And I'm saying this, by the way, after all that crap that happened, right now I'm having, for the first time in my life, I'm having a really profitable period. I'm not going to say specific numbers, but I've probably made more money on the last 4 months than I've made over my first 2 or 3 years in business. Like, it's been, I don't even want to say wonderful, I want to say too good to be true. I'm getting very paranoid at this point. Like, I'm working like 80 to almost 100 hours a week right now. It's almost, it's over midnight right now, and I'm recording this because, like, I came from a place where scarcity was the norm and the mindset, and now I'm finally, like, going through some good times, which is ironic because actually people think this is the bad time, and I'm like, wow, this is actually wonderful. It's like, finally things are working out, and I'm just pushing and shoving and pushing even more because I do not want to take my eyes off the ball. That's actually something I've been lucky to have learned from my mentors, because most people, when they get to the good times, they get lazier and they don't start cutting the fat, and they just start letting stuff accumulate on their plate, and that's the opposite. Like, with me is the absolute opposite. Like, whenever things start getting too good, I just push on it. I just go all in. I just keep pushing and shoving and going, because that's the time when you gotta really lean on it and just keep pushing. Because if you're doing good, and imagine if you added the zero to the effort you were doing, you could really make a meaningful difference in your life and in your future if you just held on to that thing and pushed even more, just a little bit more, instead of just relaxing, because you're finally doing what you thought you could be doing. And so finally, I'm doing the kind of numbers I thought I could be doing when I was really a lot younger, and right now I'm just pushing. I don't even know where we're trying to get off to go on this tangent and on this point, but this to say, bad times for some people are wonderful times for others, and it's important to realize that there is no scarcity of money in the world, and whenever there is a crisis or recession or whatever, assets are just trading hands. Like the same number of assets that was here yesterday was here today, is here today, and the number of assets that are here today will be there tomorrow. Now, are there accounting shenanigans and fake paper money and magical internet money and stuff? Yes, there are, but the real stuff is the same today as it was yesterday and as it will be tomorrow. And hopefully in a couple months it's going to be more than it was today, and a couple months prior to this video being recorded, there were less assets and less stuff than there is today. So things are good, the future looks bright, as a famous YouTuber says, and in my opinion, I think this is the best time for people that are motivated, that are deciding to make their aim heard and make their something out of themselves. This is the perfect time for those people to really get up and get moving, because these opportunities, whether we head into a recession or infinite inflation or something in between, is a perfect time to see where the gaps are and just fill the gaps that the market has, because the market is creating many gaps, and we entrepreneurs, we should not see problems, we should see solutions. And so whenever we see a problem, there's an opportunity for us to make a difference, to make a profit, and to make the world a better place. And that's my 2 cents for today. So are we heading into a recession? My opinion, 50-50, maybe not, maybe yes, probably somewhere in between. It's not going to be very bad, it's not going to be a good time either. So my opinion is just stick to what you're doing if it's producing cash flow, and just try to produce more cash flow, and whatever happens, just keep identifying opportunities where you can generate more cash flow. And if you keep producing cash flow, you're going to be fine. You're going to be just fine. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching.